Welcome everyone to another episode of Indexer Office Hours. Today is the 9th of August and this is Indexer Office Hours 71. Thank you all for attending. If anyone here is new to Indexer Office Hours, we love participation and you're welcome to participate either by voice or by text. You can either unmute your mic or use the stage chat to the top left corner. Just as a reminder, this is going to be recorded, and so if you don't want your face and voice to be out on the interwebs, make sure that you bear that in mind. As always, I'm very excited to chat about today's agenda. It's very packed, and so with that, I will move forward into the opening remarks. So, this week's GRT-IQ episode was from Derek from Data Nexus, and many of you know he is a very highly engaged and thoughtful member of the Graph ecosystem. And for those of you who don't know, as well as being an indexer, he's also a delegator, a curator, and a founding member of Curation Station. This podcast was very interesting. It spoke a bit about Derek's background, his entrepreneurial journey from becoming a subgraph developer all the way through to becoming an indexer and starting Data Nexus. Other topics they discussed was his approach of becoming an indexer and any advice to anyone who wants to do the same thing, his experience at Graph Day, his involvement in Graph Advocates and also Graph Advocates DAO. So with that, I will hand it to our good friend Derek in today's chat to tell us a bit about the podcast episode.
Thanks, Abel. You summarized it pretty well there. Nick did a fantastic job kind of organizing the episode just in terms of what topics we were going to cover. But the primary things I wanted to highlight is just the experience of going from someone who, prior to anything Web3, I was a database developer, worked a lot inside of SQL. And then from there, I encountered the graph, and then I started to work as a curator. I started digging through subgraphs, looking on GitHub and diving through different repositories. And from there, I built my own subgraph, and then eventually kind of grew within the network to having a indexer operation. And so I just wanted to highlight that for other people in the community that probably want to do the same thing. So it was a lot of fun to record. And once again, I want to thank Nick for his amazing work and consistently publishing an episode every week. And it's always very high quality content.
Plus one to that, Nick is an amazing podcaster. I really enjoy listening to his podcast episodes, and I commend the consistency. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Anna to take us into Repo Watch.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to our Repo Watch. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes. Just a quick request. A few people might not be muted, and there's occasional feedback. So if you are not muted, please check that you're not doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so links to all of the release notes and PRs can be found in the agenda. And if you are new, I'm reminding you that we will not be mentioning clients that haven't had new releases this week, but you can still see them on the agenda. So with that, on the major blockchain clients, this week, we have had a new version of Aragon, so release 2022-08-01 alpha. And this introduces better management for block snapshot files. It fixes a small memory leak. And it also renames command line flags started with engine.star to author_c.star, and this is done for better consistency with the Go Ethereum. There's a few other changes, but those were important ones. Then we have on streaming fast Geth, we have a new version of Go Ethereum, so version 1.10.21 for both Firehose 1 and 2, and we also have a new version of BSC for version 1.1.12, also for both Firehose 1 and 2. Before we move on to the graph stack, can I ask if anyone has had a chance to experience with the new version of 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗃 and with the new versions of Streaming Fast Geth?
I upgraded to the latest 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗃 version literally today, and so far I haven't had any issues whatsoever.
That's music to my ears to hear. Has everyone else had a smooth experience as well? I will take that as a yes, or you haven't tried it yet. So with that, let's move on to the graph stack. So to graph node, we haven't had any new releases, but onto the indexer service and agent, we have had a new release, so version 0.21. And for this release, I want to congratulate Alexis for his first contribution in this repo, and also want to thank Hope and Ford for all of their work put into this release. So some of the changes. So on the indexer common side, we have had, so query fees now explicitly check for numeric types. Indexer service now has detailed query logs. Indexer CLI only prints identifier for off-chain subgraphs. And there's been some like prettifying of the indexer CLI. Then for the action queue, there have been auto batch options and conditions added. There have been upgraded graph protocol contracts dependency. And on the indexer CLI and indexer common, now you can allow status latest block to be nullable. With that, who has tried this new version of the indexer service and agent? I know it includes a lot of changes that make the CLI a lot more easier to work with.
Yeah, we've been using 0.21 and specifically with the management mode of manual. So really, it's like a pure action queue based approach. And all I can say is, wow! Like, it is a complete reimagining and transformational upgrade to the indexer experience. It's really great. Both in terms of like it being a far more direct interface to communicate the intents that you have to the agent, and also just the gas savings from all of the batching is amazing. Yeah, Ford rocking it with that feature.
Thank you, Chris. And anyone else wants to add anything? I can see that Ford messaged that he just pushed indexer agent version 0.20.2, which has a database migration from 0.20.1, which is the one we just spoke about, which fixes some cases where actions fail and failure reason was too large for varchar column. So
actually, I had a question. I had a question on are these versions going to be recommended for production indexers and updated into the networks.markdown file?
Ford?
Yep. The same answer as last week. Once anyone tests it, I will recommend on production. But before then, I will not.
Cool. Sounds good.
Awesome.
But one important thing to note is that we just launched the graph protocol contracts on 𝗟𝗀𝗃, and we are switching all of our testnet infrastructure over to that. So you can still use the Rinkeby contracts; they're still live, but we no longer have Rinkeby gateways, and we'll be phasing out the Rinkeby front end. And if you want to use the 𝗟𝗀𝗃 testnet, you have to use version 20 or later, because that has access to the 𝗟𝗀𝗃 contract addresses. So just an important note if you're going to be running an indexer on testnet.
Duly noted. Thanks for the update.
Thank you, Ford. And if there is nothing else, Juan, take it away with Protocol Watch.
Thanks, Anna. And first of all, wow, Ford just keeps delivering, doesn't he? Well, going to Protocol Watch, we're going to cover a few things. First of all, forum governance. 𝗨𝗂𝗳𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧 GraphQL live queries. There's a small comment from Doden regarding live queries on the Graph client package, some possible implementation, polling implementation there based on the feedback from Zach and Adam. Then we have another update on 𝗨𝗂𝗳𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧. This is the Arbitrum, the Graph Arbitrum deployment, so basically L2. A small comment from Pablo, mostly just correcting the naming of the, which used to be called DevNet. They are kind of like changing the naming of it because it's kind of like becoming increasingly difficult to understand where are you actually standing with all of the testnets, devnets, and everything else. So yeah, just a small comment. Nothing in forum research, no new updates since last IOH. From the contracts repository, there are a few open PRs, mostly fixes and some feature additions regarding the L2 implementation. So the team is extremely hard at work with the L2 implementation, which is one of the major unblocks for everyone in the network. Then we move to the network subgraph. There have been, as Ford mentioned, there have been a few small fixes and small GitHub workflow improvements for the new girly testnet, but nothing major, just changings in the environment, and that's it. And with that, that's everything for Protocol Watch, and I'll pass it on to Abel.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So today we have two topics to discuss. Before we go into both, let's quickly just touch on action queues. So we have Ford again. We've already touched on it a little bit, but I want to create the space in case anyone has any additional feedback for Ford or any thoughts that they'd like to share, or maybe if Ford would like to share a few words following on from last week's conversation. So I guess I'll invite anyone to share any thoughts, or Ford to also share thoughts as well.
Yeah, I know it hasn't been long since last week's introduction, but yeah, if anyone wants to discuss the action queue, this is a good time to give some verbal feedback or talk about any questions you have around it. I'll share in the chat an issue that I've created for feedback as well, if you guys have any after this.
Amazing. Thanks so much for posting that in the chat, Chris. Has anyone gotten a chance to use it? I guess that's the first question I have since last week's conversation. And if so, what are people's thoughts? Oh, that looks like a resounding yes from Chris. It rocks. Good stuff.
Good feedback so far. And yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Was there one thing that kind of, and I feel like we maybe did cover this last week, I vaguely remember it, but something that I kind of wanted to do when reallocating recently, and kind of one of the actions in the queue had an error, and so I kind of like went back and forth and kind of approved and canceled different sets, and kind of just going back and forth. I did feel like it would be nice to be able to just delete an entry in the queue rather than just cancel it. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've been feeling the same way. I originally wanted to just cancel and keep all history of everything that was added in there, but I think it ends up getting a little bit messy, especially if you have the same or very similar action, like maybe canceled multiple times, and it's just going to keep growing and be a little bit harder to manage. Like I mentioned last week, I'm going to be adding additional filters to the CLI so you can do a better job of filtering just to most recent actions or certain types, etc. But I agree that just removing a bunch of the old canceled stuff will make it cleaner. So yeah, I support adding a delete command, as well as I've been thinking about maybe an update command, so you don't have to like cancel and then create a new one. Instead, you can just update. things more easily in place.
Awesome. Thanks.
And then there was one particular flow that I was at least running into in testing and using the backstop indexers where a unallocate or closeout and allocate transaction was failing because the graph node didn't have a POI available. In that case, I wanted to update a bunch of actions to be POI zeros and force equals true to push those through. And it was a bit of a pain to do so manually. I used the database. That's one flow that I was thinking about adding commands to make that easy. Something like update where it equals some sort of filter, like type is unallocate and within a certain amount of time, and so you can just do so in one batch to set 0 POIs on all of them. And if anyone can add any like friction points as they find them into the issues, we can try to create flows to make those your workflows easier. Some stuff like that.
Amazing. So if anyone has any final comments, please do shout. Otherwise, thank you, Ford and Chris, for chatting to that topic there. So the next part of today's conversation is going to be all about the automated allocation optimizer, and we have the lovely Ford the lovely Hope, who's going to tell us all about that. So Hope, without further ado, please take it away.
I think everyone here probably already know a little bit about the allocation optimizer. We spoke about it during Graph Day briefly, and since then, the optimizer has a little bit of change to it, and we would like to show you guys the current state of it and see if we can get some feedback for the next couple of months as we move on to other parts of the tools that we want to make. So yes, I can share my screen and we can run through and show a demo of it. Can you see my screen?
I don't see it.
Okay, I think it's the same thing as what Ford had to go through with Discord, so I'll be back in a little bit.
Awesome. And
Yeah,
while waiting,
typical macOS stuff, you have to like click permissions and then restart Discord in order for it to work.
a bit frustrating, but that was fast. I think Hope's back in now. Do you want to try again, Hope?
Yeah.
Awesome. Amazing.
I see it.
Okay. I think. Yeah. So I guess if anyone has any questions, I can answer anytime. I just want to show what is available for people to go through and to use. We have sort of a pretty detailed documentation on how the optimizer's math works, and we also have documentation on how to install and use the tool itself. And so this one you can find in, I think this one probably lives on Discord, and it'll go through the installation. So what you need is the allocation optimizer package and then the CLI2 package. And so yeah, I think it's pretty clear over here. What's more important, I guess, is the optimizer's comments. So usually you should be able to see there is two comments that sort of are recommended to use. One is called rules. So this one is supposed to generate the rules that you need to sort of execute the optimized allocations. So it does consider what you have on chain already. So it will tell you to first close something before you set the rules and redo the allocation amounts for existing allocations. And then it sort of look at other subgraphs and see what is the optimal results there. And then another command is action queue. This one would take, I guess, the same result here, but send it to action queue directly. But I think probably, yeah, I think I might be. I need to set the endpoints correctly, but yeah. I guess I will pause for questions here. I guess, yeah, so going into the comments a little bit, I can show rules. In general, we expect 7 to 8 comments or parameters that an indexer should specify. So pretty straightforward. The first one is indexer's ID. You can supply, and then the network ID. This one is for mainnet is 1, and then 𝗨𝗀𝗳𝗂𝗧𝗨 is 4. 𝗨𝗀𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗨 is 5. But when we have more networks, this one will be more useful. The file path is a place where you can configure your own indexer preferences. So you can, when you specify a whitelist, the optimization only look at what is in the whitelist, and then if you specify blacklist, then it will exclude everything in the blacklist to optimize on. Pin lists guarantee you to allocate to the subgraph for at least 0.1 GRT, and then frozen list is to disregard that in whether it's open or closed the subgraph. It will treat it as frozen during optimization. And then these probably a little bit more useful for the indexers. GRT gas is a parameter that people can use to use it as the cost that one person would like to pay for one transaction. So if you give it a very high cost, then the optimizer will think it costs a lot to open a new allocation, and so it will try to avoid opening more allocations rather than just spreading it out to all the allocations. And then allocation lifetime and GRT gas is it goes next to each other pretty closely. This is how we estimate the profit for an allocation. So we take the issuance of the token per epoch, and then we sort of let it compound over blocks and estimate how much the allocation will earn over this lifetime. But we do assume that in other stake on the subgraph and signal on the subgraph don't change over the lifetime. So yeah, so one is for the profit, one is for the cost. And then this one, max new allocation, is a pretty hard limit on how many new allocations you want to set. So maybe an indexer will only want to open 10 allocations, or it only want to sync like a very small set, or any particular set of allocations. You can set a maximum. And then the last one that's interesting to talk about is the notion, we call it 𝗨, but this we can probably not use a Greek word. We can say this is the notion of optimizing over time, or how greedy you are with the current state of network. So in general, as tau gets closer to 0, we are telling the optimizer to act as greedy as possible. So not seeing far into the future at all, you just maximize, even if that means you want to allocate 0.1 GRT for some kind of crazy rewards on a maybe possibly newly published subgraph. But if you increase tau to a higher number as it approaches to 1, it sort of assumes that the network is going to converge into an optimum. So basically making the entire network act as a rational player who plays before we do. And so we just sort of respond based on what the network respond. And tau is how rational we think the network is going to act. So yeah, I think this is about everything on the optimizer. So yeah, I'm open for questions now.
Really cool, Hope. Hey, did you like kind of introduce it at a high level? So I don't know if everyone heard, but this tool will provide you with the optimal set of allocations, the list of subgraphs, as well as the amount to stake on those subgraphs to maximize your indexing rewards as an indexer.
Yeah, I might have glossed over the high level motivation of this tool, but yeah, I think the previous ways of doing optimization, I'm pretty sure there is a lot of ways, and the effort for this tool is not to make everyone have the same result or allocate the same way. It is more as to give you the options to optimize based on the way you want to. And yeah, it really aims to take away the amount of work a person needs to do mathematically. While the optimizer identify failed subgraphs. No, yeah, Chris is right. So we have conversations on how much we want the optimizer to interact with the rest of the indexer stack. And so if we imagine a future where optimizer is more closely working with the indexer management server, then it can probably tell which subgraph has failed and what are the syncing speed, and it can generate some sort of metric on how much do you actually earn on the subgraph. But in general, whether the subgraph has failed or not is not something that the optimizer consider right now. Yeah, so another piece of software is, yeah, because even for now, people open allocations knowing that subgraphs has failed, but because the idea is that the indexers are not at fault at a failed subgraph, it doesn't seem to make sense for the optimizer to also consider it. Yes.
Hope, I wonder, do you have it set up so that you can show pushing to the action queue and then executing actions from the optimizer?
Yeah, I can try right now. I can share and see if it will work for us. I was trying before this, but I don't think it went through. So here we have action queue command. This is, I think, this is my indexer address. It probably failed because my testnet configurations were wrong. This is 5. don't know if I can grab my IDs quickly. So here we have 5 is the network ID. And the example CSV is empty, and then I set 50. So I'll just go with this and see if it will push towards the action queue. But yeah, I think the action queue itself, the optimizer, it does spin up a few workers. So you can also do these configurations in maybe hard code that into your version. But this one we have 8 workers. And yeah, I think the network configuration I have to figure out. Yeah, I guess maybe one other thing is that I'm in dev mode, so I think it takes longer to compile like this, and it shouldn't take as long. I'll just grab something here. Yeah, I just for explaining, we have a little bit of error defined, but it's not very granular. So we're always open for debugging issues. So if you paste these things whenever there's something wrong, it will be nice for GitHub issues. Yeah, but I think this will probably fail anyway, because when I was running it earlier, it did send the results to action queue, but this had no response. So I think I need to look at the data structure on GraphQL that were sent to the action queue. But I don't know.
I'm sure we can pick this up next time. Did anyone have... yeah, I can't see the stream either at the moment. Did anyone have questions on the action queue?
If no one has any questions, can I steal this conversation and ask something about the feature where you get to allocate directly to subgraphs using the CLI instead of like using the rules? Because I've just noticed a bunch of bugs, and I want to make sure that it's not just me that's running into them.
Yeah, feel free to steal the time for discussing.
Yeah, so
I doubt anyone else has used that yet, Payne, but
okay.
happy to get into that.
Yeah, so I'm on v19.3, so I'm using graph indexer allocations create to create allocations for various subgraphs. And whenever I use this, I see in my Grafana dashboard some very borked subgraph names, which I'll be sending a screenshot for this in the chat. Give me 1 second. So it looks like this. I just sent the image in the chat. The problem is that it's creating deployment names that are not indexer agent / the last 10 digits or characters of this IPFS hash, but it's like trying to join the whole IPFS hash in one single line, which is essentially just creating duplicates of those. Not entirely sure where or when this happens. I just noticed that with an empty database, trying to create indexer allocations using graph indexer allocations create makes this. So I guess I've noticed also something that the indexer agent tries to add those to off-chain subgraphs, decision basis dot off-chain or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the naming scheme in that manual allocations module is a little different than the rest, so that it's creating new subgraphs in the. It's probably in the subgraphs.subgraph table in your graph database. So it's not making new subgraph deployments, so it shouldn't have much of an effect on actual serving queries or the deployment syncing or anything like that. But it does look like it's making duplicate.
Oh no, I know that it's not making actual data duplicates. It's just annoying because like it fills up your dashboard with like useless stuff, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so you can delete those duplicate rows from the subgraph.subgraphs table, and that should help resolve the issue in the meantime, but I can look into a fix for that. Related that entire module, I think I may just remove. I created that right before the actions queue for manually managing allocations, but now the recommended way of going is using the actions queue. So since no one's even using that really yet, I may simply remove that or make that an alias for the action queue actions.
Yeah, so I haven't tested the V20 yet, or the well, I tested the actions queue some time ago, but I wanted to test like an upgrade path from someone that's running V19 right now to the other one.
Awesome, appreciate that.
So yeah, other than this, I'll keep you guys posted. By the way, is there an JSON RPC command to rename subgraphs or remove, like, I don't know, should I be using that or just delete the rows in the database or just filter out the table? What's most convenient?
It's probably going to be easiest for you to just filter the table, especially if you're only running in this scenario for a short amount of time.
Okay, I guess that works. But yeah, I would definitely love to not have this issue on my production DB because that's a lot bigger. And yeah, so yeah, the reason why I needed to use graph indexer allocations create was because I couldn't allocate to the subgraphs that I closed with the 0x0 POI because the indexer agent doesn't allow you to open allocations for those. If it detects the last allocation has been closed with the 0x0 POI. So I was just forced to do this. But yeah, I guess I can wait for an epoch on the testnet and then close those allocations and then nuke everything and reopen them with decision basis rules and see what happens. And then test the actual migration path forward.
One just minor point of clarification that I think is worth making is yeah, in graph node land there's this distinction between deployments and names. Yeah, the allocations module in indexer agent is creating this additional name alias, but the underlying deployment's identical. So it's this, you don't have duplicate data, you're not doing duplicate work. It's just this one additional name reference in the database.
Yeah, I mean, it's just annoying to have because having those clean tables with only indexer agent, blah, 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 then seeing the whole thing duplicated with like weird names. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's just annoying. But yeah, anyway, I'll keep you guys posted on if the migration from V19 to V20 is in any way problematic, but it shouldn't. Other than this, if you're not using graph indexer allocations create, then you should technically be safe. But yeah, I'll keep you guys posted.
Cool. May the migration gods smile upon you.
I'm not doing this in production, so even if they don't smile, I'm good.
Nice. Yeah, if anyone has any final comments, please shout. Otherwise, back to Abel, I think.
Yes, that's right. So please do share if you have any final comments.
I think that's it.
It is indeed. Thank you all for attending today's IOH. It was a great episode. Thank you all for sharing and contributing. I think what we'll do is, as Chris has mentioned, we'll just record Automated Allocation Optimizer in action and share that with you all. And hopefully that should be helpful. If everyone could go check out the previous YouTube video where we went into detail and demoed the action Automated Allocation Optimizer, that should also be helpful too. So thank you all. If there are any other comments, please do let me know. Otherwise, I'll take this opportunity to wrap. Thank you all for attending. That's a wrap.